After reading your book, we know that Aspasia was actually the teacher who taught, we can say, Socrates about love. And even we can find Socrates saying this, that the only thing I know is the meaning of love, told to him by a wise woman. Plato named her Diotima, and in the last chapter, you told us that Socrates actually wanted to marry Aspasia, but she told Socrates that that would not be the perfect match. So here, why Aspasia rejected the offer of marrying Socrates when she and Socrates both were in love? So what do you think about that?
Well, first of all, I should make it very clear that in that final chapter, I speculate. And it's an entire speculation that Socrates would have wanted to marry Aspasia. So there is no ancient evidence for that. But there is a very interesting piece of ancient evidence, which has generally been rejected by a pupil of Aristotle, actually quite an authoritative character called Clearchus. And Clearchus says that before she was with Pericles, Aspasia was with Socrates. And the word "was with" in Greek, synegeneto, is general enough to say that, they were companions. On the other hand, when she became Pericles' companion, she had two children from him. No, she had one child from him. So, to be with could be an indicator that, you had a serious affair. If he says, well, she was with Pericles, but before that she was with Socrates, whatever the "was with," it doesn't imply that it was anything less serious. So, what I suggested, slightly tongue-in-cheek, but certainly speculatively, was that we can put that together with the doctrine of Aspasia that true love is higher than purely physical attraction. And the implication is, for me, that she could have said that to Socrates, that actually, you may love me, but actually love goes beyond that. And I'm not going to be your companion because I'm going to be the companion of someone who's actually more important and more significant for the future of our great city, and that is Pericles. So the suggestion, I say, slightly tongue-in-cheek, and you can imagine this in a, let's say, a fictional recreation of the scene, that Aspasia says to Socrates, I know you love me, or you think you do, but love is something higher, and therefore you have to accept that I'm not going to be your spouse. And then she says she's going to be the spouse of Pericles. Now, Pericles was important, was someone who led Athens through great times, and indeed through until he died in 429 BC, into a war that was eventually to end fairly disastrously. But it's clear that Aspasia was an influence on him all the way. And he was twice the age of Aspasia when he met her. He would have been about 50 when she was 25. Socrates would have been her age. But he was clearly going to be someone who would have elevated her status in a way that Socrates couldn't have done. And so whatever the reasons that Aspasia went off with Pericles, and it may well have been, that they did indeed have a mutual love. We learn that Pericles was so adoring of her that he kissed her publicly every morning and every night. A very unusual thing to witness in ancient Athens, apparently, because we're told about it. And, it could have been a very fruitful and important relationship between those two, and one that seems to me to be reflected in Pericles' funeral speech, as reported by the historian Thucydides. Because in that speech, Pericles uses a phrase using the word lover. And he says to his audience, after the first year of the war, and these are the grieving widows and of those who've died in the various campaigns of that first year, and the rest of the audience of Athens who needs to be pepped up by a speech. And he says, you should gaze upon the city of Athens like a lover, like an erastes, a passionate lover. Now, it seems to me that that's the kind of thing that might have been said by Aspasia, because he was very keen on this idea of love, actually, and matchmaking, if indeed we accept the evidence both of the symposium, her being Diotima, and external evidence, which is reported to us by Cicero, but actually comes from a contemporary author called Aeschines of Sphetus, who wrote a book called Aspasia, in which he says she held salons, and she was a matchmaker, and she held salons about love and companionship and what a good marriage is. And we have a snippet of that. So if we have this picture of this very unusual woman, Aspasia, actually engaging in discussions about love and relationships, and we're told with elite Athenians, including Socrates, if we accept that evidence, then she would have been interested in the notion of what makes a good match. And if we accept that Diotima's doctrine is that love is not just about, the basic physical attraction that brings two people together, but that there are higher rungs of the ladder, and she uses the image of the ladder. But one of those higher rungs is apparently likely to be love of your city, patriotism, and you can therefore perhaps see how someone like Aspasia would have thought, actually, it's a higher form of love to love someone who is important for the political life of Athens. And I'm going for that rather than for someone who happens to love me for who I am, or my body, or my looks, or whatever the relationship with Socrates involved. Pure speculation, therefore, but one that has some basis in the evidence that we're given.